February 28, 1943. Simpson Harbor, Rabaul. The moon hangs veiled behind a thick blanket of tropical humidity, casting a ghostly, diffused light over the water. Here, in Japan's fortress-like naval base in New Britain, a fleet lies at anchor, not with the arrogance of conquerors, but with the grim tension of a desperate gamble. This is the starting point for Operation 81, a mission that Tokyo High Command believes will turn the tide in the grinding, bloody battle for New Guinea. 8 transport ships, the Ayomaru, the Kembu Maru, the Oigawa Maru, and 5 others, sit heavy in the water, their holds packed jonjing with the lifeblood of an army. Barrels of fuel, crates of ammunition, sacks of rice, and heavy artillery. On their decks, nearly 7,000 soldiers of the Japanese 51st Division stand in disciplined ranks, their faces upturned toward the gray steel superstructures of their escorts. 8 of the Imperial Japanese Navy's finest destroyers, including the flagship Shirayuki and the veteran Tokitsukaze, form a protective ring, their silhouettes sharp and menacing against the dark water. Their commander, Rear Admiral Masatami Kimura, feels the crushing weight of this mission. He knows the Allied air forces based in New Guinea are a formidable threat. Every mile of the journey across the Bismarck Sea is a gauntlet, but his orders are absolute. The garrisons at Leh and Salamaua, cut off and starving, must be reinforced. Without these men and supplies, Japan's hold on northeastern New Guinea will collapse, and the Allied path northward toward the Philippines and Japan itself will be wide open. Kimura is placing his faith not just in his destroyers and their anti-aircraft crews, but in the sky itself. Weather reports predict a storm front moving across the Solomon and Bismarck Seas, a thick, churning mass of cloud and rain that should, he prays, provide the perfect concealment for his convoy's week-long passage. As the last lines are cast off and the transports slowly get underway, a low murmur runs through the troops. They are veterans, many of the brutal Guadalcanal campaign. They know what awaits them, but they are also soldiers, camera of the Emperor, and their duty is clear. They are the fist of Japan, poised to strike a vital counterblow, but they are not moving into a blind, unsuspecting ocean. 900 miles to the south, in a nondescript building in Melbourne, Australia, the quiet hum of ventilation fans is punctuated by the soft click of decoding machines. Here, in the top-secret headquarters of the Allied Fleet Radio Unit, or FRUMEL, a team of brilliant, exhausted cryptanalysts have been working around the clock. For days, they've been intercepting and painstakingly piecing together fragments of encrypted Japanese naval communications. The signals, designated JN-25, are a complex web of codes, but the Allied codebreakers have found a thread. Suddenly, a pattern emerges: shipping allocations, troop manifests, course projections, fuel calculations. The puzzle pieces snap together, revealing a stunningly clear picture: a massive reinforcement convoy, its destination, its composition, and its departure time. The intelligence is immediately flashed to General Douglas MacArthur's headquarters in Brisbane. From there, it lands on the desk of one of the most innovative and ruthless air commanders of the Second World War, General George C. Kenney, head of the U.S. 5th Air Force. A short, pugnacious man with an unshakable belief in air power, Kenney reads the report not as a threat, but as a golden opportunity. For months, his forces had been fighting a frustrating campaign against Japanese shipping, with high-altitude bombing proving notoriously inaccurate. Hitting a maneuvering ship from 20,000 feet was, as one pilot put it, like trying to drop a baseball into a barrel from the top of a skyscraper. Kenney knew he couldn't stop this convoy with conventional methods, but he wasn't a conventional man. For months, his forces had been fighting a frustrating campaign against Japanese shipping, with high-altitude bombing proving notoriously inaccurate. Hitting a maneuvering ship from 20,000 feet was, as one pilot put it, like trying to drop a baseball into a barrel from the top of a skyscraper. Kenney knew he couldn't stop this convoy with conventional methods, but he wasn't a conventional man. For months, in the airfields and workshops Jungju of northern Australia and New Guinea, he had been nurturing a secret. His mechanics and engineers, led by a legendary tinkerer named Major Paul "Pappy" Gunn, had been turning his bomber fleet into something entirely new, something monstrous, something designed for one purpose: to kill ships. As Admiral Kimura's fleet steams into the darkness, believing they are hidden by the night, General Kenney looks at the map. He knows their course, he knows their speed, and he knows that he is about to unleash a terrifying new form of warfare upon them, a storm not of wind and rain, but of fire and lead. The trap is about to be set. The air at Port Moresby's Ward's Drome is a thick, humid soup of mud, sweat, and high-octane aviation fuel. Here, under the baking New Guinea sun, General Kenny's secret weapon is coming to life, and it looks less like a standard-issue bomber and more like something cobbled together by pirates. The aircraft is a North American B-25 Mitchell, a workhorse twin-engine medium bomber. But these are not your standard B-25s. They are monsters, remade in the image of their creator's deadly imagination. The mastermind behind this transformation is the aforementioned Major Paul "Pappy" Gunn. A 43-year-old former Navy pilot and airline manager from Arkansas, Gunn is a force of nature, a grease-stained genius who chews cigars and treats military regulations as gentle suggestions. When Kenny had tasked him with finding a way to sink ships, Gunn didn't write a report. He grabbed a wrench. He started by tearing out the bombardier's transparent nose cone, the very heart of a traditional bomber. In its place, his crews bolted solid metal plates into which they crammed 450 caliber machine guns. Then, not satisfied, they added 2 more on each side of the fuselage in streamlined blister packs. The result is a B-25 that can spew a terrifying torrent of over 6,000 rounds per minute directly forward. It's no longer a bomber, it's a flying shotgun, a strafer. The pilots, with grim humor, call them commerce destroyers. The Japanese will soon know them as shinigami, death gods. But strafing alone wouldn't sink a ship. That required the second and arguably more brilliant innovation, skip bombing. The concept was elegant, borrowed from a children's game, skipping stones across a pond. The execution was terrifying. Pilots were trained to fly their B-25s not at thousands of feet but hurtling toward the enemy at over 200 miles per hour, just 50 feet, mast height, above the churning waves. At a range of just a few hundred yards, a point-blank distance where they could see the faces of the enemy anti-aircraft gunners, they would release a 500-pound bomb fitted with a 4 to 5 second delay fuse. The bomb wouldn't plummet. It would slam into the water, skip once or twice like a flat stone, and smash into the side of the target ship at the waterline. The fuse gave the B-25 just enough time to roar over the mast of the ship before the bomb detonated, either ripping a catastrophic hole in the hull or exploding just beneath it, breaking the vessel's back. The training was brutal. Flying that low, 1 lapse in concentration, 1 stray downdraft, meant an instant fiery death in the sea. The pilots practiced for months on wrecked ships and makeshift targets in the quiet bays around New Guinea. They learned to judge the precise moment of release, to fly through their own ricochets, and to steel their nerves against the wall of flak that would inevitably rise to meet them. On the morning of March 1st, the waiting ends. An RAAF Hudson patrol bomber droning through the fringes of Kimura's weatherfront breaks radio silence. The message is electrifying. Sighted convoy, 1 cruiser, 6 destroyers, 7 transports, course 115, speed 8 knots. The position is plotted. Admiral Kimura's fleet, believing itself safe in the storm, has been found. The alert klaxon shrieks across the airfields. Pilots and crews scramble from their tents, the lethargy of the tropical heat instantly replaced by a surge of adrenaline. In the briefing rooms, intelligence officers point to the maps. The convoy is still too far, protected by the very weather it sought for cover. For now, only long-range B-17 flying fortresses can reach them, tasked with high-altitude attacks to harass and track the fleet. But everyone in the room knows this is just the preliminary act. The real show will begin when the convoy sails out of the storm and into the range of Pappy Gunn's gunships. For the men of the 38th and 90th Bombardment Groups, the time for practice is over. Tomorrow, they will fly into the heart of a Japanese fleet and find out if skipping stones can truly sink an armada. The pre-dawn hours of March 2nd bring no relief. Instead of the hoped-for clearing skies, the storm that had shielded Admiral Kimura's convoy now clings to it like a shroud, making it a ghost fleet moving through a world of gray. But for the crews of the U.S. 5th Air Force, it's a challenge, not a deterrent. Before the sun has even breached the horizon, The air at 14-mile Drome outside Port Moresby thunders with the sound of 28 Wright Cyclone engines roaring to life. The first wave of B-17 flying fortresses of the 43rd Bombardment Group is preparing to hunt. Inside the rattling aluminum fuselage of one such fortress, the crew goes through their pre-flight checks, a familiar ritual that does little to calm the nerves. Their target is a tiny moving speck in a vast hostile ocean, hidden beneath a blanket of cloud. This is a job for the Norden bomb site. For mathematics and cold calculation from 5 miles up, hours later they find them. A momentary break in the thick cloud cover reveals the convoy below, a cluster of dark smudges on a gray-blue canvas leaving faint white wakes. Immediately, the intercom crackles to life. "Target sighted, 10 o'clock low." The bombardier, hunched in the plexiglass nose, begins his painstaking work. Below, on the bridge of the destroyer Shirayuki, a lookout screams a warning. The air raid sirens begin their piercing wail across the fleet. Admiral Kimura's worst fears are realized. The Allies have found them, and they are not letting go. The sky around the B-17s erupts in black blossoms of flak as the Japanese destroyers open up with their main guns, firing timed fuse shells. On the decks of the transports, soldiers who had been trying to find shelter from the rain now point skyward, their faces a mixture of awe and terror at the silver bombers glinting in the distant sun above the clouds. From the Japanese airfields at Leh, A6M0 fighters claw their way into the sky, streaking to intercept the high-altitude threat. But the B-17s are relentless. They attack in waves throughout the day. From 25,000 feet, their bombs take nearly a minute to fall, and the Japanese ships jink and weave in a desperate choreographed dance of evasion. For hours, the only results are colossal plumes of water that tower over the ship's masts, near misses that rock the vessels but fail to break them. The Japanese gunners are becoming more accurate, and the Zeros press their attacks, stitching lines of tracer fire across the wings of the bombers. The American gunners in their turrets and waist positions return fire, the hammering of their .50 calibers a constant deafening roar. Then, in the mid-afternoon, a B-17 from the 64th Bomb Squadron gets it right. One 1,000-pound bomb, dropped into the heart of the evasive pattern, finds its mark. It screams down and smashes through the decks of the transport Kyokusei Maru. The ship convulses as the bomb detonates deep within its hold, which is packed with aviation fuel and ammunition. A blinding flash of orange is followed by a column of thick, oily black smoke. She lurches, her back broken, fires raging uncontrollably. The order is given to abandon ship. Men, many of them on fire, leap into the churning sea. The attack has drawn first blood. Admiral Kimura is forced to make a battlefield decision. He detaches the destroyers Yukikaze and Asagumo to rescue the 800 survivors of the Kyokusei Maru, a move that saves his men but fatally slows the entire convoy. Another transport is damaged and falls behind. The disciplined formation is broken. The convoy is now wounded, bleeding, and leaving a trail for the hunters to follow. As dusk falls, the last of the B-17s turn for home, their fuel and bomb loads spent. They have sunk one ship and damaged another, but more importantly, they have kept a relentless watch. Back at Port Moresby, the mood is one of grim, calculated success. The convoy has been slowed, its schedule is in tatters, and it is now fixed on a predictable course. And the weather forecast for tomorrow, March 3rd, is clear skies. General Kenny smiles. The high-altitude harassment is over. Now, the real killers, the low-level B-25 strafers, would have their chance. The stage was set. The ocean was about to burn. March 3rd, 1943. 9:30 a.m., the Bismarck Sea. The sun is a merciless white disk in a cloudless, brilliant blue sky. The storm front has passed, leaving behind a deceptively calm sea and a Japanese convoy stripped bare of its atmospheric cover. Admiral Kimura, aboard the Shirayuki, knows he is naked. His fleet, reduced and scattered, is now just 100 miles from its destination at Leh, but it might as well be 1,000. The remaining 7 transports and their depleted escort of destroyers push forward, their lookouts scanning the horizon with a sense of impending doom. At 10:01 a.m. it comes. not as a distant drone, but as a sudden, terrifying roar from all directions at once. Over the horizon, just above the waves, a swarm of aircraft appears. They are flying so low they seem to be part of the sea itself. This is not the stately, high-altitude ballet of the B-17s. This is a brawl. General Kenny has orchestrated a symphony of destruction. First, at 15,000 feet, come the heavy hitters. More B-17s, whose role is to draw the Japanese flak upward and scatter the convoy's formation with conventional bombing. Then, providing top cover, are P-38 Lightning fighters, their distinctive twin-boom fuselages glinting as they dive to engage the A-6M-0s scrambling up from Leh and Salamaua. But the main event, the heart of the attack, is happening at mast height. 13 B-25 Mitchell Strafers of the 90th Squadron come in from the north, their noses bristling with machine guns. Simultaneously from the south, a squadron of Royal Australian Air Force Beaufighters, nicknamed Whispering Death by the Japanese for their quiet engines, scream in, their own batteries of cannons and machine guns ready. The convoy is caught in a perfectly executed pincer movement. For the Japanese sailors and soldiers, the next few minutes are a descent into pure hell. The B-25s, led by Major Ed Larner, open up from half a mile out. The ocean surface in front of the lead ships is instantly ripped to shreds by a blizzard of 50 caliber slugs. The water turns from blue to a churning white foam as thousands of rounds per minute chew through steel, wood, and flesh. The sound is not the distant crump of bombs, but a deafening, visceral roar of machine guns that tears the air apart. On the bridge of the transport Teiyo Maru, captain and crew are shredded in an instant as a B-25's forward guns strafe the superstructure from bow to stern. Gunners on the destroyers swing their 25-meter cannons around, trying to track the impossibly fast, low-flying attackers, but the B-25s are on them, and gone before they can get a proper lead. Tracers, red from the Americans, green from the Japanese, create a deadly, crisscrossing web over the water. Then come the bombs. Lieutenant Blaise F. Dessalino, piloting his B-25 named the Wolf, lines up on a large transport. He holds his altitude at just 50 feet, the salt spray speckling his windscreen. The ship looms in his sights, a wall of steel spitting fire. He feels his plane shudder as enemy rounds hit his wing. He ignores it. At 250 yards, he releases his bomb. It smacks the water, leaps, and smashes into the transport's hull at the waterline. Dessalino pulls up hard, his bomber roaring over the ship's funnel just as a colossal explosion erupts beneath him, blasting a geyser of water, steel, and bodies into the sky. Ship after ship suffers the same fate. The skip bombs are devastatingly effective. They don't just damage the ships, they disembowel them. One bomb skips directly into the engine room of the destroyer Arashio, silencing her for good. Another hits the Shirayuki, Kimura's flagship. The detonation ignites her aft torpedo mounts, and in a cataclysmic blast, the entire stern of the destroyer is blown clean off. Admiral Kimura is thrown across his bridge, wounded but alive, as his command ship begins its final agonizing slide beneath the waves. Within 15 minutes, the disciplined convoy is a scene of utter carnage. It's no longer a fleet, it's a floating scrapyard wreathed in smoke and flame. The sky is thick with the black, oily pillars rising from burning transports. The ocean, once a pristine blue, is now a slick of burning oil, dotted with the heads of desperate survivors, many of whom are being strafed in the water by the mercilessly efficient attackers. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea, as a coordinated naval action, is over. The massacre has just begun. The initial, overwhelming 15-minute onslaught has shattered the Japanese convoy, but the work of destruction is far from over. The sky, which had been a chaotic maelstrom of attacking planes, now sees a grim and methodical cleanup operation. The remaining B-25s and Beaufighters, having expended their bombs, circle back like sharks that have tasted blood, their primary mission now shifting from sinking ships to annihilating everything left afloat. For the thousands of Japanese soldiers and sailors struggling in the water, the brief hope of rescue turns to unimaginable horror. They are adrift in a sea of their own ship's fuel, which now burns in vast, suffocating patches. Men who survived the initial explosions and the plunge into the ocean now find themselves swimming through fire. Their screams are lost in the roar of aircraft engines and the crackle of flames. From the cockpits of the Allied planes, the scene is apocalyptic. Pilots, their adrenaline still pumping, look down upon a canvas of total destruction. The B-25s, now joined by A-20 Havoc light bombers, come in low again and again, their guns blazing. The orders from General Kenny's headquarters were explicit and chilling. Destroy the convoy and its personnel. The logic was brutal. Any soldier who made it to shore was another enemy to be fought in the disease-ridden jungles of New Guinea. This was a battle of annihilation. Life rafts and debris fields crowded with survivors become the new targets. Pilots line up their sights and press their triggers, unleashing long, sustained bursts of machine gun fire. The .50 caliber rounds churn the water around the men, tearing through life vests, makeshift rafts, and human bodies with equal, terrifying indifference. It is a grim, pitiless task, and one that would weigh on the consciences of many airmen for years to come. One pilot later recalled, "It was a sickening sight, but they were enemy soldiers who would have killed us, so we did what we had to do." As the afternoon wears on, the surviving Japanese destroyers, themselves battered and damaged, make desperate attempts to rescue their comrades. The Asashio and Shikinami dart in amongst the burning wrecks, their crews throwing lines and nets to men in the water. But every time they slow down, they become a target. Allied planes pounce, forcing the destroyers to abandon their rescue efforts and flee under a hail of bombs and bullets. The destroyer, Tokitsukaze, already damaged and dead in the water, is bombed repeatedly until it too capsizes and sinks, taking most of its crew with it. By late afternoon, the last of the Allied planes, low on fuel and ammunition, finally turn for Port Moresby. They leave behind a scene of utter desolation. Of the 8 transports that left Rabaul, all 8 are now sunk or burning from bow to stern. Of the 8 destroyers, 4 are at the bottom of the Bismarck Sea. The remaining 4 are crippled, scattered, and racing for the safety of Rabaul, leaving the remnants of the 51st Division to its fate. The sun begins to set, casting long, bloody red streaks across the smoke-filled sky. The sounds of battle fade, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the hiss of burning steel and the cries of the few remaining survivors. Over 3,000 Japanese soldiers and sailors are dead or dying. Operation 81, Japan's great hope for reinforcing New Guinea, has not just failed, it has been utterly and completely obliterated. But for the men still clinging to life in the dark, oil-slicked water, the ordeal is not over. The planes may have gone, but now came a new threat, rising from the depths, the sharks, and after the sharks came the American PT boats, arriving under the cover of darkness to finish the job. The day the ocean turned to fire was followed by a night of unending terror.